daydreaming about dragons. Midweek reply show, Romeo. We've got some great responses coming in. I've got so many that I'm not exactly sure which ones to do first. I'm going to hit up a couple of my favorites today, and I think we've got a lot of good replies. So I appreciate it. Thank you, people. Thank you. I appreciate it more than I can say. So let's not waste any time and get to it.
Hi Judd, it's Goblin Henchman here. Just got finished listening to episode 11. I know that's a while ago for you now, but I thought I'd just chip in. I thought it was very interesting and slightly creeping me out, actually, this idea of monsters preying on the weak and vulnerable, preying on the outsiders, people who wouldn't go, might not even be noticed missing. And it just really gave me this visual image in my mind of a sort of hill giant bursting into a village and going straight for the school and just sort of devouring the children and loading them up into his lunch bag and like hauling out of town. But what a motivation for PCs. They don't need much motivating to go try to fix that situation. And actually, one thing you said in that episode, you said you'd like your monsters to punch up and not down. I didn't really know what you meant by that, but it sort of intrigued me. So perhaps you could elaborate there. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. Okay, thanks very much. Cheerio.
Goblin's Henchman, thank you so much. You have given me some great replies, and I'm just picking this one out of the mix because it's my favorite. I love talking about monsters, and the idea of monsters picking out people in society who are less able to defend themselves is something I get from True Detective, and I think it's a common trope with serial killers, because serial killers very often will go after people who are the most vulnerable. And it is a terrifying idea. I'm glad it terrifies you, not because I want to terrify you, but because monsters should be terrifying. And yeah, this kind of stuff is terrifying. Predation is terrifying, it turns out. And you could see it also in the natural world, right? Predators don't go after hale and hardy herd animals. They go after the elderly. They go after animals that are already hurt. They go after animals that are sick. They go after animals that are very young and unable to defend themselves. So yeah, predation is without a doubt terrifying. I hear you. So what does it mean that monsters should punch up? That's a great question. And it is about world building and where you put your monsters, right? You can see what someone is scared about by where they put their monsters. So if you are scared, if you put all of your monsters on the edge of town, where poor folk live, in abandoned buildings, you're saying something. Now, I'm not saying, oh my goodness, you have a monster in an abandoned building, you are a terrible person. I'm saying that it's worth fearing people in power too. It's worth saying, well, there are monsters in mansions who dress really well and buy the latest brands and eat babies. That's a terrifying monster too. So just be aware that where you put your monsters is where you're showing that you think there's something to fear in society. And I've talked about this in other episodes, but I'm going to say it again. I don't like my monsters to be too dead on in their metaphor, right? I'm not sure I want a monster that's just a dead on rich person, or rich or corrupt person. I want it to be weird enough where it's like, yeah, there's some rich person stuff going on there and like terrible wealthy people stuff going on, but there are other aspects of it that just make no sense. So like throw bits in from all over the place, I think that's interesting. What happens if you make a monster out of an industrialist and a spider and a ghost? What comes out of that for you? I don't know. But I like my monsters to be strange enough where the metaphor for what they actually are about isn't clear. So keep monsters weird and keep monsters all over society. Don't just be scared of old ladies who live on the edge of town, is what I'm saying. You know? That's what I'm saying. So, what are witches really scared of? What are witches showing a fear of? That's what I'm saying. I like my monsters to punch up, not down. Right? It's kind of why I like hobgoblins more than I like goblins. Does that make sense? Hobgoblins in the monster manual, they're these imperial organized legions who come and try to colonize and take over a place. That's a monster I dig. It's a monster that we've seen all throughout history, making the world a worse and more terrible place. I get that. I like that. I like hobgoblins. And I think if you put monsters in power, interesting things break open in your game. And it's kind of cool. I will put a link to an idea I had where all nobles are monsters. It was fun, and I hope you like it. Thank you, Goblin Henchman, and I will talk to you soon. I've got a link in the show notes to Jason D'Angelo's amazing Twitter thread. I recommend you go look at it. I wish it wasn't just a Twitter thread. I wish it was a blog post or a book or, the Jason D'Angelo podcast, something. So I'm going to read a couple of lines. Books and movies have a ton of ways to control pacing, to slow down and meditate upon or look at a thing. Books can give thoughts, backstories, dreams, sidebars, rants. Films can give atmospheric shots, visual flashes, echoes, voiceovers. I love a book that looks around and thinks about things. The thing I'm thinking about is how much of RPG play is fueled by the question, what do you do? And that makes sense in that decisions and actions are hugely important in dramatic tension and revelation of character. But that question in a well-placed novel or film is only a small fraction of the questions asked. What do you think? What do you feel? What do you fear? What do you desire? What do you remember? What are you anxious about? Etc., etc. And those are great, great questions. Those do not have to be only in books and movies. You can absolutely slow things down and say, wait a minute, what is your character fearing right now? As you open the door, what are you scared about being there? And you don't have to do that and then make that exact thing there, right? And sometimes you don't want to do this. There are times where this won't be the right move. I'm not saying this is always the right move. I'm saying this is a possible move, something to play with. Stopping and asking a character, especially right as they approach a big moment, what is your character thinking about right now? And especially early in the game, it's a really cool way to get to know a character. And it's a cool way for the player to get to know the character, because the player might be in the character's mindset, but they might not be thinking in that character's mindset this clearly. I did this in a Blades in the Dark game. I think I've talked about this a bunch of times, where a character was going up the iron rungs of a ladder. He was going up to the deck of a ship to get into a brutal and very dangerous fight. And I said, you're climbing up these iron rungs, and you can hear, your boots echoing into the ship's hold as you climb up to the deck. And you're about to try to beat someone to death with your hands, a bunch of people to death in your hands, and you might die. What are you thinking? My buddy Jay was like, not this Jason, a different Jason, said, I'm thinking this is just another day at work. Woof. It's cool. It's awesome. So you can slow things down. You can downshift. When you say roll initiative, everyone starts rolling initiative. Maybe someone can't find their die. Maybe someone's like, wait a minute, I've got to look something up. Cool. That's a good moment to be like, hey, your character is almost at the point where they're going to bleed out to death. What is their big, are they thinking about what's their biggest regret? Something to ask somebody as their character almost dies. What's that character's biggest regret? What do they wish they had done the most? Who do they miss? If they could talk to one more person, who would they talk to? I think that's good stuff. There's good stuff out there. Ways to slow down and downshift. And you can use things that you see in movies. You absolutely can. There's that famous scene in Godfather where there's a baptism going on, and then there's all this violence going on that's cementing Michael Corleone as the Godfather. And that kind of stuff you can do, you can do this in games. You can absolutely do it. I did it in our investigative Blades in the Dark game, where the characters one of the characters was really contemplating terrible violence. He was just going to throw away his badge as a blue coat and just kill someone. And so we started that game with me going through and narrating and talking about every act of violence that had happened in the game thus far. And it was a cool moment. It was a cool moment. And it was also kind of interesting to go over all these moments of violence and kind of go over them together as a table. It was neat. It was really neat. It was very literary. And like they had just seen a character killed right in front of them, and a servant was scrubbing away the bloodstains on the stone floor. It was cool. So you don't want to overdo it, but once a game, play with it. Play with a literary tool. See how it works for you. Ask the player a question. And if they don't have an answer, say, hey, think about it. Come back with it next game. You've got a couple weeks or a week or however long. You can even ask players questions. Say, hey, guys, I want you to marinate on these questions. Ask all the characters a question so that the players can daydream about them and think about it. What do you, ask them specific questions about their characters. And they don't have to reply in the email. Just say, hey, these are questions I might ask you at the table. I've been doing that a bit lately. These are things I might ask you. I'm curious what your answers are going to be. You don't have to answer in the email, but it might be something good to daydream about. So, because I'm curious. Because I find that sometimes these characters things that affect them are always shocking to me. And things that affect the players are always shocking to me. I'm always impressed by how people get touched by a made-up person. It's cool. Touched as in like they have a moment where they're like, oh my goodness, this is a real person. This is a human with feelings. And of course they know intellectually this is not a real person with feelings. But those moments of connection between fictional characters are really cool and profound. I think it's a big part of what we do. So, thank you, Jason. Thank you for inspiring that out of me. Thank you for interacting with the show and tweeting at me. I appreciate it more than I can say. You've been a huge supporter, and I appreciate it so much. All right, more info in the outro. Let's do it. And that's going to be it for our midweek reply show. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to support the show, you can purchase the Dictionary of Mu, which is my swords and sorcery supplement for the Sorcerer RPG. There are links for that in the show notes. You can hit the support this show button and support this show monetarily. You can send me an MP3 or a anchor message or an email or a tweet, and I'll get back to you. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Hope your summer is going splendidly. I saw my first reddish leaf fall and hit the car. It's August. I was pretty shocked. Strange thing, but autumn is coming. All right. Hope your gaming is going well. I'll talk to you soon.